Okay, here we go. This is extreme. I'm on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean to make a point about AI. Yes, your childhood dreams of conversing with dolphins might be closer than you think.
You may not understand everything he says, but he will steal your heart without saying a word.
And this goes way beyond our aquatic friends.
He just had gas.
You're back. He's got gas.
Lisa, stop looking at me like that.
What if there was a chat GPT for animals?
Can we learn how to speak whale, beluga, orangutan, crow, raven? And the answer is looking like, yes, we will.
And most important for me, I might finally be able to say to those squirrels in my backyard, stop eating my tomatoes. Welcome to another episode of Life with Machines and Animals. This show is powered by Lenovo. I'm Baratunde Thurston. Yo, I have been dying to make this episode. I was literally giddy during the interview. My guest today is Aza Raskin, co-founder of the Earth Species Project.
We're at the frontier of interspecies communication. So our goal is to be able to learn how to decode, listen to, learn from the other minds and other cultures of Earth.
Seriously, they're on the cutting edge of the things that dreams are made of.
Elephants, just like human beings, have names. Their names, their mothers teach them at birth is the supposition that they use them for the rest of their lives, unique names. They join parrots as another animal that have names. I am both just like, stop the presses. Oh my gosh. Names are the most important part of our identity. And animals have them.
Because they have identity.
They have identity. Holy cow. Holy elephant.
Now, before Aza was helping us talk to animals, he was co-founder of the Center for Humane Technology. He was featured in the film The Social Dilemma, and he was named to Forbes 30 Under 30 list twice. So yeah, he is officially impressive. But I'm gonna stop setting it up and drop you into our conversation. You really wanna stick around for the whole one, especially when our AI co-producer BLAIR talks to the man who's able to talk to the animals. Like, it gets weird in a good way.
One of the things we're thinking about, because we're working on not just decoding animal communication, but the fundamental tools to accelerate all of sociobiology, all of conservation science. We just launched our first major foundation model. I'm super proud of our team.
So you have your own foundation model.
Yeah. Biologists upload audio, and then with text, you can start asking questions like, how many animals are in here? What animals are in here? When are they speaking? What age are they? And it can start to answer these questions. And so start to think of it as an AI research assistant for understanding nature's intelligence. So our model can identify an animal by name just by listening to its sound, even though it hasn't ever heard that animal before. That animal wasn't in its training set.
You want to explain that one?
Sure. Here's how we think we do it. It's working, but we of course don't fully know. AI actually ends up thinking a lot in analogies. And so there's some kind of structure in scientific names where scientific names sort of tell you about the family tree that it comes from.
And the relationship between.
And the relationship. But there's also a relationship between how animals sound. So sort of like a hawk is to an eagle, like a crow is to a raven. So if you know hawk and eagle and crow, you can make the supposition that a raven is sort of like over here.
So the AI is basically just doing the SAT.
Yes.
It's solving these pairings.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I knew I never liked the SATs, and now I know why.
Yeah, because it was meant for machines.
It was meant for machines, yeah. So that's how we think it's working. And this gets into the how or why, and why did we start Earth Species in 2017? Was because before 2017, AI could do some things humans could do, but it couldn't do things that human beings had never done. So it couldn't translate a language that didn't already have a translation. And in 2017, that changed. Suddenly, AI could translate between two human languages, which it didn't have a translation for, which is sort of profound, actually. And the question is, how does it do this? And the way it does it is that the way AI fundamentally works is when it's learning patterns, it learns a shape that represents those patterns as distance and direction. So imagine the galaxy, every star is a word.
Like a giant word cloud.
Yeah, exactly.
A multi-dimensional word cloud.
Nailed it.
Okay.
And words that mean similar things, of course, are near each other.
Yeah.
And that words that share a relationship, a semantic relationship, share a geometry, share a distance and direction. So an example is like king is to man as woman is to queen.
Yeah.
So king is the same distance direction to man as woman is to queen. And if you solve the multidimensional Sudoku puzzle of every concept to every other concept,
Yeah.
out pops this rigid structure that represents a language. The computer doesn't know what anything means, it just knows how they relate.
This is emotional and powerful because sometimes scientific discovery
Yeah.
is the uncovering or the memory of something that has been lost.
Right.
And in this sense, what you're uncovering reminds me so much of the phrase all my relations or all our relations, which Mitakuye Oyasin is how the Lakota say it, but a lot of indigenous people have the same worldview and shape of their language,
Right.
which is like we're related to everything,
Yeah.
not just humans,
Yeah.
not just our kin family,
Yeah.
to the animals, to the stars, to the underworld. And so the Sudoku matrix you've described, this multidimensional cloud that is language, is really a formal way of recognizing everything's relation to everything else.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that you see tangibly that meaning is meaningless without context.
Yeah.
Without relationality, without relationship, there is no such thing as meaning.
Ooh.
So you build the shape for English.
Yes.
And a reasonable question is like, okay, but you can build the shape for German. Shouldn't they be sort of different shapes because the languages have different kinds of relationships between words? And they sort of do, but if you blur your eyes, the shape for German ends up being almost the same shape as the shape for English. And you can literally just rotate one shape on top of the other, and the point, which is dog, ends up in the same spot in both. And you're like, okay, but English and German are super related, but it also works for Finnish, which is a weird language, and Aramaic and Urdu. And
Okay.
every human language, it appears, fits inside of a universal human meaning shape. And remember, humans have had their culture for maybe, 100,000 years, 300,000 years is as long as you've been speaking.
Yeah.
Whales and dolphins have been speaking, passing down culture, grandmother to grandchild for 34 million years.
What would we stand to gain from being able to access even a smidgen of that?
Well, that's what I love, is that we fundamentally cannot know until we do.
This feels like another argument for the lack of need to discover alien life. Not that it isn't a fun and worthy pursuit,
Yeah.
but the life we have access to right here
Yeah.
in our forests, in our oceans, there's so much to learn.
Yeah.
If they've been communicating they've seen, I mean, to be able to have an animal-friendly GPT to go to
Yeah.
and ask questions of deep time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Beyond the record that we know through ice cores and
Right.
things like
Yeah.
that, or through carbon dating. Like there might be whale songs
Yeah.
about some past era that we could question
Yeah.
and learn something about, and then marry with our existing modes of science to make a clearer picture.
Yeah. I love that. I was just at the SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial
Yeah.
Intelligence, their 40th anniversary, and their work is super cool.
Yeah.
And sometimes I really wonder whether their telescopes are pointed the wrong direction.
Yeah.
That the closest thing we're going to get to encountering intelligent alien life is in our oceans and in our backyards. Like, what is the solution to humanity's problems? That's sort of like asking the question, what species is a forest? It's a malformed question.
Yeah.
Because a forest isn't a species, it's an ecosystem.
Yeah.
And the solutions to our problems are going to be multivariate. They're going to be an ecosystem of interventions, not just going to be one thing. But that's too big for a human mind to hold. We think in terms of stories. We think in terms of single interventions, or at most a couple. We don't think at the scale of an ecosystem.
Yeah.
But what is the fundamental problem we need to solve as humanity? It's that we do narrow optimization at the expense of the whole. We just do the GDP thing at the expense of the environment.
Externality.
Yeah. We just do attention maximization on social media at the expense of mental health and social cohesion. We're going to need to solve that problem. What is the only thing that we are aware of that's been able to do stable systems, even when you're in intense competition on a finite planet with finite resources, it's nature.
Yeah.
It's ecosystem. So where could Earth species go as we build these models, not just of animal communication, but animal intelligence, of ecosystem and nature's intelligence?
Yeah.
It's that you can build up models of how nature does it.
Yeah.
And then you do a kind of style transfer from ecosystems to humans to figure out how do we modify ourselves to fundamentally learn from what nature has already figured out.
And we have to be willing to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, biomimicry has been around for a bit. We've learned this. Again, indigenous life ways and ways of being have been available. We've, in the West, tried to wipe that out multiple times over. So merely the perception and the awareness won't get us there. We also have to have the respect.
That's right.
And the follow through.
That's right.
Which we can't have without the awareness. So it's the necessary but insufficient step.
I completely agreed.
What are you doing with technology that allows you to start to map this linguistic world of whales or parrots or chimpanzees?
Well, so we work with 40 plus biologists in institutions, the field biologists who are out there recording animals, blood, sweat, and tears. It's really hard work. Like with human AI, you just scrape the internet.
Right. We've put our language in a very database friendly way.
Exactly.
Like Reddit.
Yeah.
And so we're in categories. We've captioned photos for people.
Yep.
But animals have not filled out the captures.
Correct. Yeah. Maybe that's the business model. But right. Whales don't just sit there speaking to a microphone.
Yeah. They're not podcasting.
They're not podcasting. Yeah. Not yet. One of our partners, BLAIR Vigaro, who is one of the leading researchers on beluga communication, she told us that she can only use like 3% or so of the audio that she gets from tags on whales for doing her seminal research, which showed that belugas have names. And actually, they don't just say their names; they also say where they're from. They include their clan identity in their hellos. Wow. But she can only use 3% of her data because she can't tell who's speaking and they're overlapping. And that gives you a sense of the challenge, like how hard this problem is. And a lot of the original work we've done is, well, we need to learn how to denoise. We need to learn how to listen to many animals speaking at once and separate them into their own individual tracks, like listening to an orchestra and just being able to listen to the oboe.
Take me from you've collected and denoised and isolated data to making meaning from that data and associating that with call, response, with warning, with celebration, with name versus question.
Yeah. So let me introduce the idea of a digital twin, because this, I think, makes it easier to start to understand.
Hey, popping in here to explain the concept of digital twin. Now, it's just what it sounds like, a virtual replica of something real. This could be a machine, a building, an entire city. They take in live data, they can predict failures, and they allow companies and other organizations to test things out in the virtual world so they don't have to do that test in the real world. It's one of the things that makes me so excited about the future of technology, because testing in the real world is expensive. See climate change. Airlines use them to predict engine failures. Retailers use them to test out layouts across thousands of stores before they physically build them. The global digital twin market is projected to reach $155 billion by the year 2030. That's 300 times the gross box office receipts for 1998 buddy comedy film, Twins. I know you were wondering, but here's the catch. The more companies rely on digital twins to make these optimization decisions, the less they rely on us humans to do that. Businesses get these insights, but they're not always able to understand how or to repeat it without the digital twin. And if a company has outsourced its digital twin management to an outside company, then who really owns that data and that optimization? When critical models update automatically, do workers still understand how to apply them or what's going on? Or are they just doing what the models tell them to do? A digital twin can make a system more predictable, more efficient, but also less controllable. And that makes the whole situation a little more scary. All right, back to the interview.
We actually haven't started with belugas in this case. We've started with a songbird called a zebrafinch that does social learning, does vocal learning. And what we've done is we're seeing, can we pass the Turing test for zebrafinches?
Can you fool a zebrafinch?
Exactly. Can we sort of do the Indiana Jones swap where you have two zebrafinch, one talking to the other, and you swap one zebrafinch out for your AI?
Yeah.
Can the bird tell?
Wow.
And so we are in the process of seeing, can they tell? And it's looking like they can't. So an AI that can speak bird, and this is one of those big like mind bender plot twists, are like, oh, we are going to be able to speak and communicate fluently before we understand what we're saying.
That is so dangerous, potentially.
Yes, it is.
So exciting, so just confusing.
Yeah.
But you are able to fool a member of this species.
That's right. And once you have a digital twin, now I can give you that end-to-end story of decoding. Because you can say, okay, I have a digital twin of a whale. What sound does one whale make to cause another whale to dive?
Right.
Now, that might mean there's food down there, there's danger up here. But let's play out the digital twin. What kind of behavior does the whale start to do? Oh, it starts to do a feeding behavior afterwards. That must be associated with food down there.
Yeah.
And now you can start playing and be like, okay, but if I shift the sound just a little bit in this way, does it still do the behavior? Oh, now if I add 2 other whales to the scene, what happens? And you end up, when you have these digital twins, it makes it much faster to do experiments to start to getting to decode.
It feels like there's still such a distance to validation or verification. It's not like in the digital twin city, you look in their actual city, you see what happens, I guess. You could talk to the human and be like, how'd that go? What did they say? Was the translation okay? But there's no other way to communicate with the whales to know for sure what you've pulled off.
Mm-hmm.
How do you solve for that?
Yeah. Well, so I'd be lying if I said that this was an easy problem. This is a hard problem.
Yeah.
And a lot of it we're going to learn as we go.
Okay.
But this is why I actually start with the languages that align.
Yeah.
Because everything I talked about with digital twin, you could rightfully say, but that's just going to teach you about the things you can point at. How could that teach you about something abstract like love? But you can start to see when you align shapes, you might be able to get there.
Yeah.
And then it speaks to, well, why might we want to communicate? Because mostly what we care about is being able to listen and understand, but we're going to need to be able to causally intervene. We're going to need to be able to communicate to start testing our
we could say
hypotheses.
things like, get out of the way, a big ship is coming.
Right.
We could also say things like, I am so sorry for heating up your home.
Right. Yeah.
Over the past 200 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The human apology tour in terms of interspecies communication.
Yeah. Just be able to say like, we care.
Yeah.
We're sorry.
Yeah.
What can we do? Would be profound.
I would love to experience some of this animal chit chat.
Oh, yeah. All right. Let's see if you can guess which animal is this.
That sounds like, at one point I thought I heard an elephant, then I thought I heard a cat, but it's all like it's been processed through a synthesizer or like some kind of 8-bit board. You gave me a hint earlier.
Yeah, I did.
Because you said someone sounds like a modem.
Yeah.
And there's definitely some like early 90s modem screechy sounds in here. Is that beluga?
That's beluga, yeah.
Beluga whale.
That's beluga whale.
That's what they sound like?
That's part of what they sound like, yeah.
It's so digital.
It's so digital.
And it's so like Morse codey almost. Like it already sounds encoded.
Yeah.
In a way that like a machine would come along and help you parse that. Wow.
And now you know why it's so challenging.
Yeah, that's not like a clean studio environment like we have right here.
No, exactly. And this actually answers one of those questions, because a question that I think like the engineering mind might ask, looking at that the sound of belugas communicating, is why are they speaking up at 150 kilohertz? We hear up to 20 kilohertz. So they're speaking way above our hearing range.
Right.
But sound doesn't propagate very well in water, at least high frequency sound.
Okay.
High frequency sound sort of gets killed by water quickly. You only get like low frequency. So what are they doing communicating that high?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, right. It's because they are on top of one another.
Right. Yeah.
So they may well be communicating things that you can't just eavesdrop on from far away. You have to be right up close because they're communicating so high bandwidth.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, Aza. Like, first of all, we're going to have like books published by whales.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have music published by whales.
Yeah.
Like the whole idea, there's already too much content.
Yeah.
And now I got to keep up with like what's happening on whale Twitter,
Yeah.
right? It's just like, it's a lot.
Yeah. But would you rather have AI slop or like
Whale bring
glop?
on the whale noise.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
Sure, for sure. Is there something else you want to show or have us hear?
Let me show you just another thing, just because I find it very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
And this goes back to like what parts of experience might we share?
Yeah.
And so there's a thing called the mirror experiment.
Okay.
And it's a question of how would you know whether another being has self-awareness? Like you can't just ask yet. And so the answer that scientists came up with is something called the mirror test,
Okay.
where you paint a dot on an animal where they can't see it, you show them a mirror, and if they look in the mirror and see the dot and they start trying to like investigate it, you know that they've said, that image in the mirror, that is me. They have the abstract concept of self. And so this is actually dolphins looking in a mirror.
They are so fun. They're so silly. Oh my God, they do. They're just like us.
I mean,
They're like checking themselves out in the mirror, like being very playful.
Right. I think it's the universal experience, at least of mammals, that you look in a mirror and you check out your abs.
Very fit dolphin. Yeah.
Right. And like
So dolphins pass
the mirror test. And
okay.
In one of the shows of like human ignorance or arrogance, or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
elephants for the longest time did not pass the mirror test.
Oh, that's surprising.
Until the scientists realized they were using small mirrors.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. We're going to need a bigger mirror.
We're going to need a bigger mirror. And they're like, okay, they're looking in the mirror and they only see like a portion of their cheek. And they're like, who's that? What's
they
that?
don't even know that that's an elephant.
Right,
which
exactly.
is the age-old riddle.
So that's one. And just another. So if they're communicating, we think they are, then they're likely communicating about their interiority. Themselves. And that's
or themselves in relation to another.
Exactly. And that's one of the deepest things. And then another deep thing, this is one of my favorite things to show, is these are lemurs.
Yeah.
Taking hits off of centipedes.
Wait, they do drugs?
Yeah. So they get these centipedes that are poisonous. They take bites off of them. They enter these like trance-like states. They get...
Their eyes are getting a little very, very narrow. They're drooling all over the place.
Yep.
Like, we've been around that dude.
This is essentially, I think, where Burning Man came from.
Yeah.
Like, they get super
returning
cuddly.
to our animal nature.
And it turns out many species
Yeah.
will seek out transcendent states of consciousness. Dolphins will intentionally inflate pufferfish
Yeah.
and pass them around to get high off of their venom. So it's literally puff, puff, pass.
Just puff, puff, give. At Life with Machines, we believe technology should benefit us. And so does our sponsor, Lenovo. Lenovo's Smarter AI is your AI. Personalized and easy to scale, Smarter AI delivers outcomes that matter most to you and your business. With full-stack AI hardware, software, and service solutions, Lenovo's bringing the transformative power of AI to industries, organizations, and people of every kind. Our small but mighty team is a great example. Lenovo has our back. Devices for every step of the way? Check. Unparalleled services that seamlessly integrate with said devices? Check. Lenovo isn't just a hardware company, but a full suite of solutions that help you run efficiently. Visit lenovo.com/smarterAI to discover how Lenovo is using AI for good to power people forward. Okay, so we're shortening a distance here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In the Western mind and economy,
Yeah.
animals serve us.
Yeah.
They're literally servants or food.
Yep.
Right? They work for us or they feed us.
Yeah.
The idea that they have names, that they have identities, that they explore the same questions we explore,
Yeah.
engage in many of the same activities, they care for their young, they get high.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That changes a lot.
Yeah.
Rights, they take on much more tangible meaning when you start to view the language
Yeah.
of these creatures.
Yeah.
There's a rights of nature movement
That's right.
been really kicking off without this contribution. Just the idea that a forest or a tree or a river or an animal species has some say in what happens to it.
Yep.
And that it's not just people who decide where this river goes. But now if you can listen to the animals, you don't just need the park rangers to tell you or the scientists to tell you.
Yeah.
You can go direct to the source. Will animals be testifying at the UN? Will they submit to the environmental impact studies on a development project?
Mm-hmm.
Animals could testify at the development meeting
Yeah.
on what happens to this watershed.
Yep.
But if you just ask the watershed, and I know indigenous communities in some cases have been designated stewards to kind of speak on behalf of,
Yep.
but this is an even more direct channel.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if with Earth Species, you're applying what you already know, even at this early stage, into those realms. Are you working with more than human rights and rights of nature? Are you working with indigenous folk who already have a tighter kin relationship with some animal species?
Yeah. So we've started reaching out to a number of different orgs and starting little pilot programs.
Okay.
So like with the Earth Law Center, to say, all right, they're already working, as you said, on rights for nature.
Yeah.
What does it mean when we can actually, instead of having someone interpret nature as a human, when we can just hear from nature itself?
Yeah.
And so we're starting a program around that. There's another one called Nature Perspectives, which is about, exactly as you said, having a language model learn from an indigenous elder and then learn to speak on behalf of a river. Can we incorporate like the animals in that river? So we're starting pilot programs there.
It's just it makes everything more.
Yeah.
There's more going on.
Yeah.
And so if you're teaching a class on anything, you have a whole new set of source texts, and a field trip takes on a different meaning.
Yeah.
You don't just have to watch videos of animals or look at them in picture books. You could observe their interactions with each other with a deeper level of understanding. And so what is anthropology? What is sociology? What is climate science? Bro, like this is a lot, man.
It is.
And
It
I was
is.
prepared for this conversation.
Yeah.
I think this is gonna rock a lot of people's worlds. We're talking in late 2024. And earlier this year, you got an infusion of funding for Earth Species Project.
Yes.
Can you tell me a bit more about that and what that funding is going to allow you to do?
Yeah. So we feel very grateful. So Reid Hoffman and Waverly Street, which is Lorraine Powell Jobs, they put in a combined $17 million.
Okay.
Which sounds like a lot, but of course we're an AI, which means it's actually not that much.
It's one chip.
Yeah, right. But it's, as a nonprofit, like this was quite a bit, and it gets us, on around 20%, 25% of what we're going to need to finish the project.
Yeah.
But what it enables us to do is really start growing the team. So we've brought on as our chief scientist this incredible thinker maker, Olivier Pentquin, and he was the founding member. He started Google Brain in France.
Yeah.
He wrote the very first audio language model, the first time that like a ChatGPT could listen and speak.
Yeah.
And that's meant that, I think we've always been like interesting from a conceptual level. We've had good machine learning and ethology people, but now people from the very tops of the AI field are starting to come in. We've hired like 5 people in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And I think it's in part because it's such a interesting, fascinating problem. And if you're on the human side, you're just working on scaling up language models and doing efficiency stuff. Yeah. It's just in some sense a more, I don't really want to say more meaningful, but I think that's what they're feeling.
Sometimes what drives the innovation is luck.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just doggedness. Sometimes it's competition.
Yeah.
What are the incentives to drive you forward?
Great question. So we opt to doing as much of our work in the open as we can.
Yeah.
And the question becomes a really interesting question of what is the right amount of power to put back into the world? Because, humpback whales, their song goes viral.
I'm sorry, what?
Their songs,
yes,
they can go viral. So whatever reason,
like humpback billboard, like what does that mean? They go viral.
Remember, humpbacks can sing across ocean basins, and actually, there's I think this is super rad. There is a channel in the ocean called the SOFAR channel.
Okay,
and it's just the right depth that there's like a temperature gradient and salinity gradient, and it acts like a fiber optic cable. So if you go down there and you make sound,
Yeah.
that sound will bounce, like across an ocean.
Wow. It's like the interstitium of the ocean.
Totally.
Yeah.
And whales are known to use it to communicate. Like
Okay.
sperm whale, humpback will go down
Yeah.
into that channel. They will communicate. And don't quote me on this, but I think the longest known back and forth communication is something like 1,500 kilometers.
Yeah. With no microphone.
No microphone. This is
Okay.
It's the original Whale Wide Web.
There you go again. We're going to keep count. That's at least 2 of these whale-based puns. All right. The third time and we're pulling
done.
the plug on your
All right.
microphone.
I'm on notice.
Yes.
But what that means is that for whatever reason, the Australian humpbacks are like the K-pop singers. Their songs often get picked up and sung by the world population within a couple generations. Or rather, a couple seasons.
So there's culture.
So there's culture.
Yeah.
So what happens if we just create a synthetic whale that
Right.
sings?
Oh no. Auto-tuning whales and AI. So we're going to have AI generated whale hits potentially?
Well, we need to be really careful.
And what does
right?
it do to their
What does it do to their
actual-
culture? Like
Yeah.
we might really disturb their culture. We might
Right.
create a viral meme or some kind of cult. We don't know.
Misinformation amongst the animal kingdom
Yeah.
spurred by us.
Yeah. You can imagine how damaging that would be.
Yeah.
And so we have to be really careful. And we actually when we started at Earth Species, we're like, we're going to do everything open source.
Right.
We want to give back maximally.
I've heard that before.
And then we're like, oh
And
no.
then you realize the power associated
The
with
power
learning.
is so strong
Yeah.
that it could be misused in really profound
Right.
ways.
Okay.
Every technologist needs to know the 3 laws of technology.
Okay.
And the first one is whenever you invent a new technology, you uncover a new domain of responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Understood.
And examples are we didn't need the right to be forgotten until the internet could remember us forever.
Yes.
Or we didn't need the right to privacy until
there
Kodak started to produce the mass-produced camera.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when Brandeis invented the idea of like we need privacy, got into the Constitution, the whole thing.
What's the second law?
Second law, if that technology confers power, it'll start a race. And the third law is if you do not coordinate, that race will often end in tragedy because there is some new commons has been opened up.
Yeah.
The technology lets you exploit that commons for power or profit. It starts a race to do so, and that commons gets fundamentally decimated, right? The attention commons
Yeah.
is the perfect example. And so that makes us think, all right, what is our obligation as technologists? Well, we need to think through what races we're going to begin, what domains we're going to open. And the obvious ones are for Earth Species, it's going to make it easier for poachers to attract animals. It's going to make it easier for ecotourists to like bring in animals.
Yeah.
And it's going to make it easier for factory farms to subdue their animals and get productivity. Oh, man. So before there's economic incentive, before the technology is real,
Yeah.
I think we have an obligation to figure out what is the Geneva Convention for Cross-Species Communication? What are the norms and the laws, both at the international and the national level, that try to put blocks for the use of this technology before that race begins? So we are starting to think about that.
We're going to do slide into a conversation
Yeah.
with a different direction of More Than Human.
Okay.
Our AI co-producer, Blair,
All right.
has some things to share.
All right.
Given the levels of threat to whole ecosystems because of climate change and collapsing biodiversity, what keystone species would you prioritize trying to communicate with, and why?
I'd suggest focusing on species playing vital roles in their ecosystems and facing significant threats. High on my list would be coral. Coral reefs are incredibly biodiverse ecosystems facing severe bleaching and degradation. Understanding their communication could reveal stress indicators, allowing for timely interventions and conservation strategies. Bees. Bees are essential pollinators, and their decline poses a significant threat to global food security. Decoding their communication could help us understand their needs and develop strategies to protect their populations.
What do you think?
Interesting to start with coral reefs. It's known already that healthy coral reefs and unhealthy coral reefs have different sounds, and that researchers are out there now playing the faking the sound of a healthy coral reef, and that actually attracts animals back in and can sometimes kickstart the reef back into health. It's sort of a true fake it until you make it.
Yeah.
And I think what's cool about the models we're making is that fundamentally they're supposed to be, they are cross species. Like we train them on current versions are 20,000 hours of cross birds, whales, monkeys, and that means researchers working on coral reefs will be able to use it to begin to decode their ecosystems while we're using it to decode like specific species.
Yeah. What about bees?
Bees are amazing. And just as a side note, every political tribe has claimed bees as their own. That's how popular they are. Like communists look at bees and like, they're all the same. They each has their own workers. Each is doing their own thing. So like communists are like, bees are communists. Democracies are like, bees vote. And when they come back, they dance and they wiggle. And they recruit other bees to decide where they're going to nest and like where to go feed. So they're democratic. And then monarchs are like, well, there's a queen bee. They're definitely a monarchy. Socialists do the same. Every political group claims bees, which I just think is sort of cool.
It's because they just be.
There we go.
Boom. How did it feel? How did it feel?
I know it gave me a good buzz.
All right. I want to put one more thing on your desk. So we're living through a number of crises that relate to non-human species.
Yeah.
Climate crisis.
Yep.
Heavily affected by us. And biodiversity crisis. Just the mass extinction age that we're living in. Some species are, from a network perspective, more critical than others. They're these keystone species that kind of keep the ecosystem together. Which of those would you want to decode sooner?
Yeah.
And what impact could you imagine that having in our goal to keep this planet and our relationship with it in as close to balance as possible?
Yeah. It reminds me of the Blue Marine Foundation, or friends of ours, and their theory of change is go take world leaders out to the crown jewels of their nation. So they'll bring them scuba diving for the first time, and they'll see the coral reefs, and they'll see the manta rays, and that often inspires those leaders to come back and say, I'm going to protect that.
Right.
And I'm going to,
because they know it. They have a relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that is what we're going for.
Yeah.
It's sort of like giving all of humanity the overview effect, where you see Earth for the first time from the outside. And it's when humanity first saw itself, like the first Earth selfie, that's when we got the EPA, NOAA, Clean Air Acts, modern environmental movement got started. And that was in the Nixon era, which is not the most environmentally friendly era. And so the question is there a way that this kind of moment where we get the new overview effect, where we're like, we are not the only species that, can that help to galvanize the movement that already exists? Because at the same time, our systems are going to start breaking down. Like if you mutilate the tree of life long enough, at some point you cut the branch upon which you depend. And
we already have in many ways.
Exactly.
Mass migration, droughts, epic storms. It's underway.
That's right.
The question is the pace.
Yeah.
And how much suffering.
That's right.
And how do we adapt to try to slow it down?
That's right. And if I sort of zoom out fully, there's like, there's sort of this question of what kind of species are we? And the marshmallow test?
No.
It's like the marshmallow test is this test where they would give kids a marshmallow and they'd say, I'll be back in 15 minutes. If you haven't eaten the marshmallow, you get another marshmallow. Right. Yes. And sort of test the delayed gratification thing. Yeah. And just, I need to put this asterisk in, which is like, of course, when they've gone out to replicate this test, it turned out there's a socioeconomic thing but the whole point is, it's a metaphor for, do you have delayed gratification? Can you do the righter thing when it's the harder thing?
Yeah. And
I think right now, we as a species, we're a one marshmallow species. We take the shortcut, we grab the power, we burn the oil, even though we know what it's going to do later. We use the plastics, even though we're creating so much forever chemicals that it costs more than the sum total of the GDP every year to clean it up. And the question is, how do we call ourselves into being a two marshmallow species? And that's not a question so much as what we must do. It's a question of who we must be.
Yeah.
And when I think about what Earth species might do, and again, like what is the solution to humanity's problems? It's an ecosystem. I think Earth species It can't be the whole solution, but maybe it's a keystone species in that solution. It can help call us through awe and wonder into being the two marshmallow species we're going to need to be to survive ourselves.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. We need everything we can get. This is something new. This is not in the models that have forecast our future. So I'm with you. You can count on me. I want to be an ally in this.
Hell yeah.
I want to know what's going viral on the whale charts and more.
I think when we zoom out, we think about the broader context of AI. And the image in my mind is sort of like we've built this civilization, but it's a bicycle. And whenever you pedal the pedals of this bicycle, we get skyscrapers and we get technology and we get medicines, and it's awesome. But also, not as a side effect, but as the primary effect of pedaling those, we get pollution, we get environmental degradation, we get the biodiversity crisis, we get growing inequality. And so what AI does is it increases the efficiency of the overall system. So if we're already near our overwhelm points in the biosphere and the psychosocial sphere, like what happens when we just make it all go faster? Another way of saying it is we've always had, as humanity, a relationship with technology. And we've always used technology to solve our problems. And in so doing, we create more, bigger, different problems later. That is to say, there's a can, we kick the can down the road, we solve whatever problem we had, but in the process, we got bigger, different cans later. Yeah. And that's actually, at least for those who have been on top of that trade, the dominant caste, that's been a good trade. Like, I like being able to fly around the world. Plastics are probably a good thing, even though now those cans are the size of the world, right? It does cost more than the entire GDP to clean up forever chemicals. We are hitting fundamental tipping points and boundary points. And the fundamental invitation of AI, because AI happens not in exponential time, but in double exponential time, because AI makes AI better. That means that later becomes now, unlike climate change, which like it's always like a little further out. The problems with AI are going to hit now. It becomes humanity's final test and invitation to have a different relationship with technology. That is, we can no longer afford to do technology in the way we always have, which is kick the can down the road and solve the problems when we get there. It is that new relationship with technology, which I think Earth species is a little part of, that we're going to need to survive ourselves, the thing that we need to be the two marshmallow species.
I want to thank Aza for joining us. If you're watching this on YouTube, you know all the buttons to press, so press them. If you're listening to this in your podcast app, please rate, review, and tell a friend about the show. Regardless of how you are getting this interview inside your head, please find us on Substack, newsletter.lifewithmachines.media. There, I offer my deeper takes on what conversations like this lead me to believe, and we share more behind the scenes, making of, and of course, content with BLAIR. Our website is lifewithmachines.media. I'm Baratunde. Thanks again.